Hello, everyone, and welcome to Physical Development in Middle Childhood. Like the last chapter in Physical Development, you've got a lot of facts to sift through in this chapter. And so this video is intended to narrow that stuff down so that you can focus on some of the stuff that I think is particularly important for people who are working with young children in schools. Because as we know, middle childhood is basically grades 1 or 2 through 5. So if you're an elementary ed person or a K-12 person, this is going to be especially relevant to you, how bodies and brains are growing at this age. So some basics about body growth. This is where boys and girls tend to start developing physically and unevenly, and girls start spurting up past the boys. When you hear about girls developing faster, this is usually the time we're talking about. Young girls typically are more able and ready to attend school due to the fact that they're able to sit longer. Boys can be fidgetier, but basically there's not so much a difference in body structure as there is in the fact that girls start zooming up past the boys. In addition to bodies changing, brains are changing. Growing and developing, there's an increase in the myelinization. Remember that myelination is when you get that nice fatty sheath around the nerves that promotes efficiency. And so children have higher cognitive functioning. One of the things that we notice here too is that stress really does start interfering with the brain's ability and with the child's ability to pay attention in class. And I'm going to provide a link to This American Life that talks specifically about how stress for young children in school affects the way they're able to concentrate and learn. It's a short clip. I think it's really worth listening to if you are going to work with young children and you can't seem to get them to focus. That might allow you to have some insight about why that might occur. So brain development, lower socioeconomic status children start to really lag here because partially it may be that they are having fewer experiences. Remember that experiences build brain architecture. And so if you have parents who are working extra jobs or aren't around to interact, it's harder for architecture to be built. So there tends to be a trend in that children with lower economic statuses, brains tend to be a little less specialized, less active during language activity. And there's also gender differences that girls' brains tend to latch on to language quicker, while boys tend to latch on to math quicker. Now, there's a big caveat here that girls don't do math or boys don't do language. That's not something I want you to lodge in your brains. It's just that sometimes there are gender differences in how quickly the brain sort of takes to things because of the lateralization, because of what size specialize more quickly in boy and girl children. This is not to give anybody an excuse to say, well, boys just know math better. We still teach all topics to everybody. But these topics, there are some research indicates that it does come easier depending on gender. Now, brain plasticity is so fascinating in early and middle childhood, and I'm going to put another couple of videos on this site just to show you what children are able to do with their brains. Daniel Kish is famous for being able to echolocate which is to use like clicking noises to find his way around. He was not blind at birth, but he lost both eyes as like a 2-year-old, and he taught himself to actually ride bikes and get around by hearing the echoes as he makes clicks. He's really fascinating to watch. And in fact, when they did an fMRI on Daniel Kish, they noticed that even though he does not have functioning eyeballs, when he echolocutes, I mean, his vision centers in his brain light up. He's able to locate things. He's able to tell you what they are. And he is very fascinating on what he taught himself to do as a young child. Also, I recommend seeing the Cameron Mott video. She's the child who had half of her brain removed, and it's like the other half adapted. So 2 really interesting videos if you want to see how amazing the brain is, especially in early and middle childhood, to adaptation. Okay, now motor development's really big right now. Gross and fine motor skills are eye and hand coordination should improve. Boys and girls are both using their bodies in new ways. Boys tend to have more strength sort of activities, while girls tend to have more flexibility. But basically, they should be having lots and lots of opportunities to move. Now, one of the things that children don't get is enough physical movement, actually, in the United States. It's recommended that children get 60 minutes a day, and about half the children get that. One of the problems, again, for low socioeconomic status children is lack of experiences. Notice how many activities require money. Like if your family goes skiing, that's not a working class hobby typically for a reason. It's expensive to enroll your child in sports is expensive, or ballet, or there are opportunities that get missed when families don't have enough money to pay for them. And also in low socioeconomic communities, sometimes if the neighborhood is crimey, then kids aren't able to really get out and investigate and basically get the exercise they need. So socioeconomic status wreaks havoc with children in a lot of ways. Now, in school, we can't always control what's going on at home, sadly, but we can control what's going on at school to some extent. And we've made some pretty big, I think, leaps in terms of thinking about young children and how they learn best. And what we're learning more and more is that children need to wiggle. They need to move, especially young boys who often are kinesthetic, think with their bodies, have trouble sitting still and concentrating for long periods of time. And so I think schools are getting better at trying to adopt ways to get kids moving, to give them breaks. But one of the problems we find is that, here, I'm skipping through slides right now, is that because of the emphasis on testing, we often ditch recess because we're like, well, our kids have to do well on the end of levels. And so recess is sometimes cut short, even though principals tend to agree that children need recess. A lot of times it's shortened because, we've got to have more focus on reading, writing, arithmetic, that kind of thing. And also children are punished. A lot of times it's a common thing for children to be punished by taking recess away, which is usually the very thing that child needs because they're going nuts at their desk. So one of the things I'd like to, seeds I'd like to plant, especially if you're going to work with young children in grade school, is to honor movement and the fact that children's brains need movement. So we've got some problems with the physical activity, basically, in the United States. And one is that easy access to television, easy access to the internet, tablets and technology, which is all wonderful to some extent, but it carves in on this physical time sometimes, the getting outside, the kicking balls, all the things that our bodies want and need. And sometimes, especially if you have parents who are busy, who work a lot, who are stretched very thin, a television or a computer might end up being a babysitter. So, a couple of things about organized sports. They are really good for kids sometimes. It really depends on coaches, on parents, because the great things about organized sports are that they can really develop good lifelong health habits and a love for sports. It develops social skills like teamwork and social confidence. It can help shyer kids learn to express themselves in a game. The big problem, as you probably can guess, is parents who get a little bit too competitive, coaches who can be mean, and that we end up forcing little children into a way of playing that is not fun anymore, that is more reflective of their parents' or coaches' wants and desires. And so you have to think about what's appropriate really for a young child to play and how far should you push them. Another problem with organized sports is that poor kids can't participate. They are expensive a lot of times. And of course, disabled children are often left on the sidelines because of our focus oftentimes on competition. So those things are worth bearing in mind as you think about the ways you might encourage movement with your younger children that are in your care. So basically, brains and bodies are linked. That in this class, we separate physical development from cognitive and social is a little bit artificial because strong bodies, moving bodies, all of that is linked to cognition. And notice how much social development happens on the playground at recess, when we negotiate rules, when we talk about what's fair. So these things are linked. So right now I'm going to introduce what I'd like you to do this week. I would like you to adopt somebody else's child. So imaginatively, you've rolled the dice, you've had your own child. I'm going to ask you to go back to our initial discussion. I'll provide a link and pick somebody else's child and really try and think about, given their race, class, gender, what opportunities do you think they have? What kinds of opportunities for physical development do they have? What challenges might they have? Notice that even in wealthier families, that a preponderance of technology might actually be a detriment because of how easy it is to become sedentary. So, adopt a child, really think about their physical challenges and also what they have available to them, what they might have available. Remember that children in the West, one of the great things about living out here is we do often have more active children because they get to go outside if they grow up on farms. There's pluses to this rural thing, right? So as you adopt a child, think about what might be happening realistically with their physical development. And as always, use terms from the book. And I look forward to your post this week.